Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, September 4th, 2019. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. You'll notice that the ES in the previous session had rejected off of the previous month's close price, which was Friday's close, the previous week's close, that blue dot, and pushed down a little bit here, right to the midpoint of the previous month's range. That's the high extreme. The low extreme is down here. That's the midpoint. Today what you're seeing is price pushing through the previous month's close and through the previous session's high price, and is now trading in the 29.30 level. That's very important. As we know, everything above 29.40 to 29.50 has been offered, and we're looking at this type of line right here where every time it gets into that zone it gets pushed right back down. So this move right now is very reminiscent of the recent moves that we've seen, whether it be this day above the previous week's high, this day above the previous week's high, this day above it. Each one of those times right there was sitting just above the previous week's high, or the previous session's high, or the previous month's high in this case, and then failed right back down. It was the opportunity to get in ahead of the drop. So if there's any failure to hold above the previous session's high price for the ES, that would be a big indication of weakness right now. So if you look at the intraday chart, there is a box forming precisely above the previous session's high price of 29.26.5. So if there's a failure to hold 26.5, this thing could really create a selling pressure that leads to a move back to yesterday's lows, or perhaps outside those lows. So again, this is going to be very important. If price can hold that zone and hold the 23.75s, the previous week's close here, then perhaps there could be a pretty significant rally that can happen. So that's going to be the zone to watch here for signs of rejection. If we take a look at the NQ, very similar price action over here as well. You'll notice price holding below major resistance, that is 7,800. You'll also notice that price, for the most part, has traded above the previous month's close here, and is holding above the previous month's, or right at the previous session's high. So above the previous month's close and right at the previous session's high. That's where we are at the moment. This one formed a bit of a double top up there before pulling back to the previous high, so it's sitting right at that level at the moment. But up here, time and again, it's been offered since August, and to trade above this zone at the moment, you got to be cautious and watching for signs of failure. If there's a failure to hold the previous month's close price, that blue dotted line, that's at 75.5, 75.75, that's going to be very important, because we could be looking at much more weakness. But even before that level, the previous session's high price, which comes in at about 95s, that is going to be the level to watch, and we're right now trading at 97.75. So this is going to be an early indication of weakness if price cannot hold these two levels early on, as that could lead to quite a bit of selling pressure ahead. Alright, let's take a look now at crude oil. Crude oil here, very bullish after yesterday's bounce. It's up 1.5% already pre-market. One thing you'll see is that price again continues to trade in a very, very narrow range. Before that it was here, before that it was out to here even, and so this price action has got very, very compressed here. I mentioned in the previous session here in the trading room that we're just now rejecting the previous month's or previous week's low price, and if we can reject that level, we could bounce back toward 54.04. That's the midpoint of yesterday's range. And perhaps on a swing basis, we could even come back up the range in general, as this continues to be kind of the range, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and now it's working its way higher. But overall, I would say this is all building for weakness coming ahead. So I think, as I mentioned yesterday morning in the pre-market report, the seasonality is usually quite bearish as we head into late September, early October. That tends to continue to show additional weakness heading into and throughout Q4. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. And right now we're building out this compression that suggests that we're going to be looking at a big breakout soon, whether it's up or down Right now, seasonality is pointing down. So continue to watch 57s. Any push into 57 is an opportunity to sell it until proven otherwise. So right now, while we could have a little bit of near-term strength, again, given the downward bias, I would say watch for signs of rejection at or just above the previous month's close for signs that this thing could be headed lower. All right, let's take a look lastly at gold futures. Again, gold remains quite bullish. Pullbacks remain buying opportunities. In the previous session, I mentioned that we were showing strength in the Pima trigger zone, and we could be looking at a 1585 move ahead. I also mentioned that even if we were to drop down into the pivot range here, it could still be an opportunity to defend for a continuation. At the moment, the early key level to watch as we head into the session here is going to be the previous high here. So Friday's high price is 41.90, just call it 42. Today's low so far is 42.60. That's right around where the midpoint was yesterday, which is 43.5. So that zone right there is very important here intraday. You want price to be able to stay above this high, above that midpoint for a shot at, looking at higher moves. Now that's just on a one-day intraday basis. A failure to hold that level could open up a return back down. And again, as I mentioned, if we do get a little bit of a 2-3 day pullback into the pivot range here, that could still be a fantastic opportunity to defend that area. So right now, this is the zone to watch. On a one-day basis, if it can hold that level, it could certainly start to push higher. Right now, 1560 has been a very significant area of resistance. So even if we don't break today, maybe a failed low tomorrow, those types of things. But right now, all pullbacks still a buying opportunity until proven otherwise. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this develops heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.